For the past few weeks, our nation and the world have watched in horror as the Middle East has been plunged into chaos, violence, and pain. My heart aches for all that have been affected ever since we saw the first images of Hamas's brutal terrorist attacks carried out against innocent civilians across Israel. I want to acknowledge the heartbreak, the hurt, and the helplessness that many of you may be feeling. These are trying times, made even more difficult when information has become harder to trust because it is either incomplete or it is intentionally warped to capitalize on these raw and heavy emotions. But I also want to take a step back. At a time where it can feel impossible to see any common ground beneath our feet, to remind us of our common humanity and values. First, we can all agree that the loss of any innocent life is a tragedy. That includes the Jewish families who were brutalized, tortured, and murdered by Hamas earlier this month, and the Palestinians in Gaza who now find themselves caught in between Hamas and forces trying to hold Hamas responsible. Second, we can agree that rigorous and consistent diplomacy should not be abandoned, that it should be the center of our continued response. That is what President Biden has done, working around the clock to deliver humanitarian aid to those in need, minimizing civilian loss of life, and prevent a widening of this deadly war. Lastly, we can recognize that as much as we want this conflict to be over, we cannot just declare that it is. Hamas continues to hold around 200 hostages, women, children, and their brutal tactics remind us of what is at stake if we do not rescue them. Hamas also continues to threaten Israelis with regular rocket attacks, making defensive weapon systems like those that President Biden has asked Congress to approve for Israel all the more critical to saving civilian lives. And as long as these threats remain clear and present in the region, how can any of us trust the word of a terrorist organization that so recently shattered an already fragile peace? We cannot lose the humanity that grounds us. We cannot say that it's okay to condemn hostages to die, that it's okay to preach messages of eradication or annihilation against the Jewish people, or to let anti-Semitism or Islamophobia go unchecked in our schools or on our streets. As history has well established, finding lasting peace in the Middle East is one of the most elusive goals of our world. But saying that we stand with Israel as it recovers from a terror attack unlike any we have seen in half a century, or that we want to protect innocent Palestinians who are not Hamas, these should not be unreasonable positions to have. These are baselines that will help take us down the path of peace. It may be a winding road, but if we cannot take at least these steps in agreement, it will be an even harder and more painful path.